must break you. Yes, Rocky 4, the fourth entry in the Rocky saga, starring Sylvester Stallone in the iconic role as Rocky Balboa, the Italian stallion. Rocky 4 came out in 1985 by MGM Studios, and it came out at the peak of Sylvester Stallone's stardom as well. He had also gone on to create another character of John Rambo and was in the midst of making Rambo First Blood Part 2. So he's in really good shape. He's probably in the best shape of his life here for these roles. So let's get into Rocky 4. Rocky 4 takes place after the events of Rocky 3. Rocky, of course, came out the victor in the brutal fight between him and Clubber Lang, played by Mr. T. He's now living the retired life in his mansion in Philadelphia with his wife Adrian, his young son Robert, his brother-in-law Paulie, and they have a pet robot. Yes, I'll get into that as well. Kind of bizarre. His friendship with Apollo Creed is definitely still strong. They're very good friends. But then enters a new character into the Rocky saga, Ivan Drago, played by Swedish actor Dolph Lundgren. Ivan Drago is a Soviet pro boxer and a soldier. He's chemically enhanced, as well as physically enhanced, to become one of the most dangerous boxers of all time. His PSI, punch per square inch, is brutal, enough to basically kill somebody. As his trainer would say, whatever he hits, he destroys. So we're introduced to Ivan Drago very early on into the film, and his main thing is he wants to challenge retired boxer Rocky Balboa to an exhibition fight in the United States. Kind of prove who he is and prove his worth. Now, Rocky, before he can accept that challenge, Apollo Creed sees this and he wants to fight Ivan Drago. So he convinces Rocky to be in his corner to assist him in training for the fight. The exhibition fight is held in Las Vegas. Very cool opening to it. Typical Apollo Creed, lots of show, big entourage. And even James Brown is there doing Living in America, that song. So it's pretty cool. And up pops Ivan Drago, who's not into showtime, etc. He basically is there to fight and defeat Apollo Creed. So he pops up from the under the ring, kind of raised up on a platform, and the fight begins. Now the fight's brutal, and Rocky is in his corner. Rocky's contemplating ending the fight, calling the fight to save Apollo, and Apollo pleads with Rocky to let it go on. So Rocky makes the decision to allow the fight to go on. Tragic consequences. Apollo Creed is killed in the ring. Okay, and there's no spoilers here because it's mentioned in other Rocky movies as well. This is where Carl Weathers' character of Apollo Creed dies. So basically, Rocky immediately feels a huge amount of guilt and decides to come out of retirement. He's going to challenge Ivan Drago to fight against Adrian's wishes. Adrian does not want him to fight, plain and simple. She's worried about him. She actually says it's suicide. And at one point, she actually gets upset and says, "You can't win," saying he's undefeatable. So Rocky basically says, "I got to fight him. That's just the way it's got to be." Now, the fight has to be held in Moscow, Russia, because of all the hate mail that Ivan Drago's got because of the death of Apollo Creed. And it's going to be held on Christmas Day in Moscow, Russia. No money's involved, and Rocky agrees to this. So against Adrian's wishes, he prepares to go off to Russia. Now, there's a really cool scene in this movie where he talks to his son, Robert, prior to leaving for Moscow. And essentially, his son asks him, "Aren't you scared of fighting this big, giant guy?" And Rocky agrees. Yeah, he does get scared. But there's something inside him that wants to go that one more round when you don't feel you can. And this is kind of a throwback to the original Rocky movie because he says going that one more round when you don't think you can make the entire difference in your life, which basically sums up the original Rocky, which I thought was a pretty cool throwback to. So anyways, him, Paulie, and his new trainer, which is actually Apollo's former trainer, Duke, portrayed by Tony Burton, take off for Russia. And I gotta admit, the song, the training sequences are cool, and I'll get into that in a few minutes. So he goes to a remote cabin in the wilderness in Russia to train so he can just focus on training and focus on Ivan Drago. So that's pretty cool. Throughout the training, though, he needs that boost of morale, and Adrian shows up. So that's cool, too. And the training continues, training montage. Then it leads into the big fight in Moscow, Russia with Ivan Drago. And yeah, it's a hardcore fight. I mean, Ivan Drago is probably the most dangerous opponent that Rocky's ever fought. And there's that risk of not only losing, but being killed in the ring, right? So there's that kind of fear factor in the movie as well. The fight's shot pretty well, and they're real punches. And I'll get into it because Sylvester Stallone actually got hit so hard by Dolph Lundgren during the filming that he had to be airlifted on a low altitude flight for heart surgery in California. So that's, yeah, and Sylvester Stallone and Dolph Lundgren are great friends to this day, but that happened during the filming. So when they punch, they really punch each other. So there's some really good sequences in that. And again, I bring it back to Sylvester Stallone. He's able to direct this while he's in the ring fighting, so that's unique in its own way. The fight sequence was good. I actually personally like the Rocky 3 fight sequence better, but this one was pretty good too. Of course, at the end of only one fighter wins, and there's an emotional Rocky speech to the crowd in Russia who are now cheering for him, and just basically saying it's better than two guys trying to kill each other in the ring than 80 million, I guess, referring to nuclear war, etc., between Russia and the USA. Ironically, the same year, Rambo: First Blood Part 2 comes out, starring Stallone, and in that movie, Rambo's literally killing all these Russian soldiers. So I kind of find that ironic. But anyways, Rocky 4 is an entertaining movie. And let me get into the music. Rocky 4 has the best music. I mean, other than Eye of the Tiger and Rocky 3, Rocky 4 offers some really good soundtracks in this one. And one of my favorite songs is done by the same group who did Eye of the Tiger, Survivor, doing The Burning Heart during his arrival to Russia. I love that song. It's on my iPod all the time. As well as No Easy Way Out, performed by Robert Tepper. And that's for the montage scene where Rocky goes for a drive in a sports car and thinks back to all the previous movies. And a really nice kind of montage to the other movies in that as well. Hearts on Fire. It's a song during the training. So, and the music itself during the training is quite good. So I give credit there. Now let's get into some of the cons. The movie itself is the shortest Rocky movie of all time. It's just over an hour and a half, not 2 hours like the other Rocky movies. And you feel it's rushed. You truly, truly feel it's rushed. To give you an example, after Apollo's death, they literally have 30 to 45 seconds to grieve for him, and they're on to the next chapter in the movie. And I felt they should have given more time, more dedication to that. Like Apollo Creed's funeral was pretty much wrapped up in 25 seconds, so it was extremely quick. Now, I know why this happens. The studios always get involved. They want to make a movie shorter so they can fit more show times per day in a movie theater to make more money. And that's been done in many, many films. Recently, Justice League, which was a disaster when it came out. It was 2 hours. Finally, Zack Snyder brought out the proper Justice League, which is 4 hours, and it's a masterpiece. So that's what happens when studios get involved. Having said that, though, and then the past year, Sylvester Stallone has actually dedicated his time during the pandemic where he's doing the director's cut of Rocky 4. He's basically found all the stuff left on the film floor. He's put it together, and he's got rid of the robot, the pet robot. It's gone, which is great because that was a little silly. He's changed the title now to Rocky versus Drago. So that's going to be coming out in the next year, and I'll keep you posted on my site here when it's coming out. Excited to see that because I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. Rocky 4 is not a bad movie. It's just really short, I found, and it was really fast-paced. So action-wise, it's good that way. But as far as the characters go, they do a great job here. Talia Shire returns as Adrian. You see a different version of Adrian here. She wants to be in Rocky's corner, but she also cares about his safety. His son's a little older in this movie. He's about 6 or 7 now, and they have a pretty good connection there. Burt Young is great. He's Paulie. He's sort of fitting in the corner where Mickey used to be, and really does a great job there as well. And of course, we also have Tony Burton as Duke. He does a good job as Rocky's trainer in this movie. Carl Weathers gives his final performance as Apollo Creed, does a good job there. And Dolph Lundgren. Doesn't have a lot of lines, but realistically, that's exactly what his purpose in this movie was. He's supposed to be, this brutal Russian soldier who doesn't talk very much. So, and boxer. But it is what it is. He does a good performance there. The neat thing with Rocky 4, it serves as a prequel to actually Creed 2. So Creed 2 is not only a sequel to Creed 1, but it's also a sequel to Rocky 4, this picture. Because in 2018, over 30 years after Rocky 4 was in movie theaters, we're introduced to Ivan Drago and his son Victor Drago, who's a new boxing contender that'll fight Apollo Creed's son, who's trained by Rocky Balboa. So it's a great lead into that movie. So if you're going to see Creed 2, you definitely have to see Rocky 4 for sure, because it'll give some good credence to why these characters are the way they are. And I have to say, in Creed 2, fantastic movie, by the way, we do see a better version of Ivan Drago. There's more character, there's more rationale to why he lives the way he does, etc. Where we didn't see a lot of that in Rocky 4. The other tidbits in Rocky 4 is the Ivan Drago's wife played Ludmilla Drago, played by Brigitte Nielsen. Brigitte Nielsen and Stallone got married shortly after this movie was made. It was one of his worst marriages by all means. Didn't last very long, but they were in the movie. So Brigitte Nielsen, she was a model at the time. She actually does appear in Creed 2 as Ivan Drago's ex-wife, but it's funny, I guess Stallone and Brigitte Nielsen didn't share the same dates as far as filming went, so they didn't really see each other while they're filming Creed 2, let's just put it that way. The other thing too is Rocky 4 is one of the first movies that's not filmed in Philadelphia. It's set in Philadelphia, but it's not filmed in Philadelphia. As a matter of fact, I think it's the only Rocky movie, if I'm correct, that was not filmed in Philadelphia. So the Philadelphia set was actually filmed in Los Angeles. The training scenes in Russia were actually in national parks in the United States. But the cool thing was the arena in Moscow, Russia, was actually filmed at the P&E Agrodome in Vancouver, British Columbia. And as a fellow Canadian and British Columbian, that's super cool. So it also shows that Stallone does have a love for Vancouver, which you'll see in Creed 2 as well. Okay, so what do I give Rocky 4 on a scale of 1 to 10? I give it a 7, and I'll tell you why. I liked Rocky 4. I like the fight scenes. I love the 80s music. But it was a condensed movie, and it felt condensed. It was shortened down, you can see by the studios, to fit more showtimes in a movie theater, which is kind of greedy and selfish. Having said that, still a good movie, but I would like to see more character development and more focus on the storyline rather than just the action. Now again, as I mentioned, Rocky vs. Drago is coming out. The director's cut of Rocky 4 by Stallone, who has a true passion for this character, and I'm very excited to see that. And once I do, I'll give that a review. Until then, tell me what you thought of Rocky 4. Leave some comments below, like or subscribe to my channel. Take care.